Hello Laziali all over the world. Welcome to another episode of Lazio Lounge. I'm Vittorio Campanile. With me again, there is Alasdair McKenzie. Alasdair, last time you went out of your apartment, when was it? 3 days ago, 4 days ago, 5 days ago? How are you in your new cage, I would say?
Yeah, I'm feeling a bit caged. It's been a strange week. It's been pretty much ever since we last spoke since this has happened. But yeah, I think we're on day 7 of the quarantine now. So I think people are starting to go a little bit crazy, myself included. But thankfully, I'm still able to work from home. Thankfully, I live with my girlfriend, so I've got company here and things like that. But yeah, it's a strange situation, to say the least.
Strange situation also because Serie A is not playing. Well, I would say at this point, no league in Europe is playing at the moment. Probably in the next days, there's going to be the announcement of the postpone of the Euro 2020 is going to be 2021. The Champions League as well is going to be postponed. I don't know when. And so we decide to do something different this time. Alasdair, do you want to explain what we decide to do as it was your idea?
Yeah, well, I was, I suppose, feeling a little bit of coronavirus fatigue, which has, I suppose, understandable after a while in Italy, where we've been struggling with it for quite a while. And yeah, I mean, I think people here have started to kind of to start and try and take a positive outlook on life, which has been quite nice. Has been singing from the balconies in the evenings and things like that. And so I was inspired to do something positive with our podcast this week because, like you say, we don't have any football to talk about, and get everybody to tell us. I say everybody, anyone who fancied telling us their most treasured memories of Lazio, and that can really be anything, depending on how personal you want it to be. If it's just a particular moment or whatever it was. And so we intentionally kept it fairly vague for people to interpret in their own way. And yes, it's been really nice, Vittorio. How many responses we've got, also the variety of responses we've got. And I don't know about you, but reading through them has really lifted my mood because it has made us look back on some nice times.
I have to be honest, I'm really concerned we won't be able to read them all in one podcast. But yeah, let's start. I think otherwise it's going to take ages.
Yeah, we'll try our best. I mean, I've tried to be organized with this time, so we have the best possible chance by kind of grouping them together a little bit in terms of categories. So I think an obvious place to start is something that you will have a much better memory of than I do, which is the Scudetto season of 1999-2000, which unsurprisingly a few people have talked about. So the ones I'll read out, we've had 3 of our listeners get back to us about this. Sulfaden wrote to us that their memory is the last round of the 1990-2000 season, listening to a very weak Italian radio signal, even though I didn't understand the language, which I quite like. Then Lloyd Del Rosario just simply wrote winning the Scudetto in 2000, and Zoltan W. Daniels said just generally the Sven-Göran Eriksson team. I love that beautiful memory. Matteo Rivalta got back to us with 3 moments, but the moment number 1 was Calori's goal outside the Olimpico in the traffic while he was with everybody getting out of the stadium in the car. So yeah, I mean, unfortunately, from my perspective, I was only 10 years old at the time, so it's not quite the same for me. But how was it for you? And do you share that as being one of your most treasured memories? I would have expected.
You know what? I think the Coppa Italia, the first Coppa Italia we won, was probably the biggest achievement because it was the first trophy Lazio won, at least since I was alive. But I remember that Sunday, like it was yesterday. We had that, the Curva Nord came in 15 minutes later, and I was part of them. And then obviously we start winning, but against Regina, it was easy to win. And then the nightmare happening in Perugia. We had the radios there, and people didn't understand what was going on. I remember it was Curva Nord, and then suddenly everybody celebrating because Calori scored. And the last 10 minutes of that match, it was, terrible. At a certain point, one believed that Juventus scored, and so it was over for Lazio, and that I nearly died at that point. And then it was simply unbelievable. I remember it was so dramatic, so. I had a terrible headache after that. It was so concerned, so feeling the pressure, etc. That I, I had such a terrible headache. I remember going to Piazza del Popolo to celebrate with all the Lazio fan, and I was such in pain that I will never forget it. I will never forget it.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, for those who don't know, because I'm sure there are plenty, it was 20 years ago after all that
It
wouldn't
was
know
already
the
20 years ago.
story necessarily that well, but can you explain a little bit as well quite how unexpected I suppose it was that Perugia would get that result? And so what was the kind of expectations, the mood amongst Lazio fans on that day with the Regina game and Juventus game coming up? How much of an upset was it? How much did that add, I suppose, to the celebrations, the fact that it was Perugia of all teams who pulled that off?
Well, yeah. To be honest, background was that Lazio in the last 3-4 weeks have played much better than Juventus. You could see that Juventus was struggling. They struggled against Parma. They didn't lose because the goal of Cannavaro was disallowed, but that was simply embarrassing. And it was the last day of the season. Lazio was playing against Regina, and Juventus was playing away against Perugia. Both teams fighting for the relegation. So, even if Juventus was struggling, you couldn't expect nothing from Perugia, especially because, let's not forget, the owner of Perugia at that time was a Roma fan. And he always said that he would never do a favor to Lazio. So anybody expected nothing from them. And instead, there was this incredible storm in Perugia. So the Juve couldn't play a great football. They suspended the match, and they said, Collina knew that he had to play the match that day because otherwise Perugia is not far away from Rome. I think you've been there. It's 1 hour and a half by car. So Lazio fan was already organizing themselves to go. If the match was postponed to Monday, the day afterwards, every Lazio fan would have gone to Perugia and to be there at the match. So, it would be a problem there. So Collina was good enough to make the second half of that match start later when the storm a little bit decreased. And incredibly, Calori scored an incredible goal. I think Inzaghi missed a huge chance at the end of that match. And yeah, Juventus didn't create any chance after that. And yeah, it was simply unbelievable that Lazio won and Perugia beat Juventus. And so Lazio was Campione d'Italia.
Incredible. I mean, to be honest, if anything, I was kind of surprised that the number of people who responded with memories of that season or of that title were so few. But maybe that's because of how long ago it was.
Yeah.
It's possible. But yeah, I mean, kind of. I'm not going to do this exactly in chronological order, but there are a few more old ones as well that are quite nice. I mean, Brian David O'Donoghue wrote to us, Gaza first, Gaza last, Gaza always. And I mean, again, like I already said, before my time, Gaza at Lazio, but his time at Lazio has gone down almost in folklore, in the UK especially, as kind of the moment that really a whole country started paying attention to Italian football. It was when they started the UK coverage of Italian football on TV, the excellent Football Italia program. So I have a lot to thank for that, getting me into Calcio and into Lazio. So I mean, his influence was massive for the British fans. But can you tell us a little bit about what he was like as a player and how he was greeted in Rome? What the relationship was like?
Well, everybody adored Gaza, right? In Rome, everybody loved him. The Curva Nord start chanting in English for Gaza, And if you ask, everybody will tell you the goal he scored against Pescara. But my memory was the goal he scored in the derby. Last minute, Lazio was one man down, and the situation was terrible because Roma went ahead and was 2 minutes till the end of the match. Lazio was one man down, a free kick from midfield from Beppe Signori, and he put it in the box. And Gascoigne is marked by Benedetti, that is a central defender who was 10, 12 centimeters higher than Gascoigne. And you see the ball, and Gazza's jump and anticipate the defender. And I think it was Cervone, watch the ball goes in the net. It was unbelievable. I remember start crying with all the players, with all the fans in Curva Nord, and Gazza coming under the curva, shouting and crying. I mean, that was. I thought we would have lost that derby, honestly, and so it was unbelievable. First goal with Lazio for Gascoigne, first goal in the derby. It was amazing. It was, yeah, I think the best memory, even against Milan when Lazio won 3-0. He played a great match, but the derby is so particular for Lazio fan that he will always be remembered for that.
Yeah, and that, to be honest, actually, that is a kind of running theme throughout a lot of the answers we've had. Is essentially, if you can do it in the derby, people will remember you. But I mean, yeah, like I say, I wasn't watching Lazio week in, week out while he was there, but from the clips I've seen of him and the videos and games I've watched, he just does looks like he was a beautiful player to watch. I mean, the way he runs with the ball, his technique seems to have been so much better than everyone else on the pitch from what I've seen. But also, I mean, I wanted to ask you how much his kind of attitude, I suppose, his kind of, he's always playing tricks and jokes and always laughing and, doesn't take life seriously. How much of it was that made him so popular as well? Did people kind of like him because of who he was as well as how he played?
I think fans love him because it was Gazza, and especially because of his story, right? When he arrived injured, it took 1 year to come back. And again, he got injured again with a tackle from Nesta that at time was in the Primavera. He struggled so often to get back in form. And, fans start to wish to see you playing football because you had so many problems. And he was a nice guy. He was, I mean, Dino Zoff, one that should be completely the opposite of Paul Gascoigne, loved him. He said he was such a nice guy. And he did so many tricks to poor Dino Zoff that I cannot believe that Zoff loved him. But this tells you how nice guy was him. Every Lazio player of that time will tell you Gazza was a great person. He was amazing. He was a friend, So everybody loved him because he was a nice guy. I think you agree. You were right. He wasn't taking life so seriously, and this probably is one of the reasons why he didn't have that big success in football. But at the same time, he was a big friend. Every teammate loved him, and obviously the fan loved him as well. So it was unlucky that he didn't have success with Lazio, but it was a great moment to be a Lazio fan, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think as well it says a lot about a player that you can have such an influence that you alone and the clubs you move to is enough to bring followers with you. Football is a fairly tribal sport. People have their teams that they support and usually stick with them. And I think it takes kind of special characters, special players to actually get fans, I suppose, to follow their careers and take on the teams that they're representing as they go. But he seems to have done that. I mean, it's amazing. But anyway, we'll move on. I will say the last thing on that is that there is actually, if everyone's listening to this in English, there is an audiobook called Gaza in Italy about his time in Italy, which is definitely worth listening to, with a lot of kind of funny stories about his time there and so on as well. But anyway, we had quite a specific one from Amar Haskic, who said his treasured moment was Hernan Crespo's goal against Real Madrid in the Santiago Bernabeu. Pure magic. He writes, I had to look this one up. We lost that game, so I found it a little bit strange, but it was a very nice goal. Do you remember this, Vittorio?
I think Guerino Gottardi scored as well in that match.
I don't know. I'm leaving this match to you.
Well, I wasn't in Rome anymore. I think I was in Paris at that time. I was living in Paris at that time. And I remember I shouldn't be saying this, but out at dinner with my wife during that match because I said, we have no chance. We will never win it. In fact, we didn't win it. But I know I'm going to have a lot of people complaining, but I didn't love Hernan Crespo. I thought Hernan Crespo is a little bit like Lukaku these days. He's a great striker against small team, but struggle against big team. And so that was probably the first goal he scored with Lazio against a big team. That was, can I say a little bit, the moment when Lazio started going down because financial crisis for Cragnotti, Lazio was starting to lose the confidence, players and things like that. And that was the moment where everything was going down. So, yes, scoring against Real Madrid was probably huge. But, I remember the Supercoppa we beat Manchester United. So, I thought that was probably in Europe the biggest moment of our team. So,
well, it clearly resonated with Amar anyway, and it was a very nice goal, having gone and had a look at it now. Very, very nice composure, good control. Very, very happy with it. But we'll move on to another very memorable goal. And now we're in territory of things I can remember, which is, I'm sure you'll be relieved to hear, which is the Rome derby of 2005. So Patrick Bowman writes, in response to our question, there are many moments, but one moment that stayed with me is the 3-1 derby win in the 2004-05 season. I was at my friend's place with Roma fans. I was the only Laziale there, and Roma were huge favourites. And when Di Canio scored the first goal, I was rolling around on the floor like a maniac. Giozo Potionzi wrote to us as well, saying that seeing the 2005 January derby victory live at the Olimpico was his favourite moment. And that really is a derby, Vittorio, isn't it, that stands out in the memory, I suppose, but most of all, above anything, for that Di Canio goal, which was just unbelievable.
You know what's the problem? I remember the first time Di Canio scored in the derby. I was still at school, and at that time...
So was he, I think, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was the first year out of Primavera, and that Roma was fighting for the Scudetto, while Lazio was fighting for relegation. And suddenly, Paolo Di Canio scored. That was unbelievable. About, instead, the other goal of Di Canio. Again, you remember Lazio has just changed manager from Mimmo Caso to Papadopoulou. Lazio was really in the relegation fight at that point, while Roma was fighting for the top position. I was in Milan, and I remember I had some... You never faced this problem. I had journalists, Roma fans, that I thought it was the Friday before that derby, said, you have no chance of winning it. And I said, you're the favorite, but in the derby, you never know. And yeah, I had my little son he was little, and he was close to me when I was watching the match. And when Di Canio scored, I jumped, and my wife nearly killed me because I woke up my son. So, but it was an incredible derby. I remember even Julio Cesar scoring and dancing.
The dance, yeah. I know. Yeah. I was watching this back again today, and actually I found out if anyone else out there ends up in quarantine, you can actually watch this entire game on YouTube. They've got the full 90 minutes on YouTube, so if you fancy a trip down memory lane. But yeah, I mean, for me, that Di Canio goal has to be one of the best goals I've seen in a derby. I mean, if anyone hasn't seen it yet, I mean, long ball over the top, takes it first time on the volley, and
Liverani.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, yeah, and then Cesar's dance, you know, just everything to love about that. And for Gyozo, who wrote to us that he was there at the Olimpico, it must have been an incredible game to be at in the stands. I mean, even just watching it on the TV, you can really get a sense of the atmosphere that there was at the time. And I think, like you say, probably as a result of it being an upset as well.
I don't find the book, because he wrote a book when he came back to Lazio, and he said that obviously that week he was so uh, nervous, and he pumped up all the players. Rocky said that uh, that week was terrible because Di Canio was pushing them and saying, "Hey, it's a derby, it's a derby," and Di Canio in his book said that he didn't sleep that night. He was so nervous he didn't sleep in the locker room before coming in. He said he felt that he was too nervous, too anxious, and thought, "Oh my, it's gonna be a disaster because I'm too nervous." And I don't know if you remember, during that week he challenged Totti. You remember on the newspaper saying that he and so he felt that maybe he exaggerated. He was too anxious, etc. And then luckily he was able to play very well and score that goal. He said that immediately when the ball arrived to Liverani, he already started running to the goal because he knew that Liverani was going to put the ball there. And he said that he ran too fast. He had to slow down because he was anticipating too much that ball, and so thought, "Oh my, I'm gonna miss it." And he said he scored. So I don't find that book anymore. I gave it to my son. I don't know where he put it, but it's in Italian. So for a listener, I don't know if there's an English edition of Paolo Di Canio's book, but yeah, it's really interesting. That part is really amazing.
Yeah, that's a funny point you pick up, and I was thinking that about that after rewatching some of it today, where he was clearly so pumped up for this game, and then at the same time, it's one of the most delightfully composed finishes you've seen, you know, because he really controls that, and it's a dipping pass. It's not an easy finish at all. It's like an amazingly controlled, calm finish for somebody who you would expect almost in that position to just lash at that, you know, try and hit that volley as hard as he could, but he doesn't do that. You know, another memorable celebration going straight for the Curva Sud. It's a very different kind of celebration from Cesar's one, but yeah, you know, different celebrations for everyone in that game. But yeah, an amazing.
Like the first time he scored the derby, again in Curva Sud, he went celebrating. So fans loved it.
Yeah, always a great antagonist, if nothing else. Right. Well, get on to the one of the probably the biggest theme, to be honest, of this whole podcast, which is people telling us really about their first games, because that is a huge thing for people. In terms of their most treasured memories of Lazio, is getting to their first game and the experience that they have of being in the stadium. And I think especially for you know, perhaps this is something that I can relate to more than you, Vittorio. If you spend a lot of time from overseas supporting Lazio and it takes you years and years to be able to actually get yourself to a game, then it makes it even more special. So we've had quite a lot of these kind of responses. Well, let's go through a few of them. I mean, Nando said. Oh no, sorry, that's the wrong one. Alexander Mikkelsen said one of his first matches at the stadium was Lazio 5, Sampdoria 2. When he was just a little kid, he went with his family. Do you remember the most notable thing about that game, Vittorio?
Well, that game is in the history books of football, right? It's the first time.
I don't get anything past you, do
I? Well, and I have to be honest, I was thinking about that, and I don't know why. Well, I think I understand why. So basically, in that match, Mihajlovic became the first player to score 3 goals on a free kick. But he did it already against Atalanta. But that time he scored 3 goals, but one on free kick as well. But one of them a player passing the ball before he shoot on the target, so it's not considered the record. And the reason why I made a mistake in the past is because Ferron was always the goalkeeper. He was goalkeeper at Atalanta and was goalkeeper at Sampdoria at that time when Mihajlovic scored a hat-trick from a free kick. So, but yeah, history, right? And it was, I think, two of them were under the Curva Nord, and I was there, so I remember it.
You were there with little Alexander. I mean, I can imagine, Alexander there as a kid watching that, thinking football is so easy. You just get this guy to stand and step up, and just every time he touches it, it flies in. But I mean, it wasn't just a hat trick of free kicks. They were such good free kicks as well. I mean, absolutely incredible technique. But anyway, yes, some other amazing first games as well. Alec Pearson says, Kolarov running the length of the field with the ball and scoring in our 4-2 derby victory in April 2009. My first game at the Olimpico. Everyone screaming that he should pass to one guy, then pass to another guy, and finally for him to shoot. And yeah, I mean, that was, again, as a first game, an absolutely incredible one to have been at. Obviously, 6 goals, a Lazio win. Zarate's goal in that game as well, incredible. I mean, it was...
Yeah, it's funny amazing. That he talks about. It's funny he talks about Kolarov and not the first goal of Zarate, right? Because Zarate was the guy in that moment, and he scored a terrific goal in the derby. And the funny thing about the goal of Kolarov, I don't know if you remember, he scored with the right foot. That is not his favorite foot, so it was a little bit surprising. And Donny was, I think, surprised as well because he goes down quite slowly to try and catch that ball. So. Yeah, it was an incredible derby, and great memory again there. Kolarov finishing the derby, Zarate scoring. That was a great Lazio that year.
I think Lichtsteiner as well, didn't he? The two kind of very attacking fullbacks. Yeah. For any of our more recent Lazio fans, I suppose these was back in the days when we liked Kolarov, so things have changed a bit obviously since. Steven Scarpula as well, a very interesting one. He said, my first live match, fall 2002. That means autumn, by the way, for non-Americans. Alessandro Nesta returns to the Olimpico in red and black. It was surreal. Half the stadium whistled, half cheered. Again, another pretty amazing first game to be at, a Lazio Milan game with Nesta coming back.
Yeah, that was those days where the rivalry between Milan and Lazio was huge, right? And nobody was happy about Nesta because he went away without saying nothing. Fans was expecting, I don't know, a paper on the newspaper saying, sorry, guys, I had to leave. It wasn't my decision, etc. He didn't say nothing. For a lot of Lazio fans, I remember for the Curva Nord in particular, it was like he ran away. And, you're a football fan. You're in love with your players. And someone leaving you like that, it's not something that you like. So, yeah, it was quite complicated. And, yeah,
I think there was there not a banner in the Curva Nord for that game, and that alluded to something along the lines of you left without saying a word, but we'll say goodbye here. It was something like that.
Yeah, and I remember there was a big discussion between Lazio fans. Someone didn't like that, and other appreciated the banner. So, that was the bad days of Lazio, when everything was collapsing and Cragnotti was really struggling to pay the checks for the players. So
yeah, I can only apologize because that was pretty much exactly the same time as I was getting on board. So
this explains a lot of things.
That's when things really started collapsing, was as soon as I started following the team. But sorry, Nando, we'll come back to now. He says, my most treasured Lazio memory is Scudetto 2000, 26th of May. We'll get on to that. But then he also says, in person, my first Lazio game at the Olimpico was in 2004. Lazio Ancona. We won 4-2. he lists some other games as well. The Lazio Roma Coppa Italia semi in 2017, the derby last year 3-0 win, and then even Lazio Juve 3-1 win just in December as well makes Nando's list of Lazio memories. But I think it is amazing to have a memory of your first time at the Olimpico being this incredible event where like a big derby win or the Nesta coming back or something huge like that. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that. I mean, my first Lazio game was a 3-2 win over Udinese, and there was nothing particularly special about it. I mean, apart from Giuseppe Biava scored an overhead, but but it's I think it really is for lots of people just the experience of getting to the stadium the first time can be enough to really, I suppose, be the fulfillment of a long-held ambition, and that itself is very special.
Yeah, and you have to say that traveling around the world, the experience of a Italian football match is completely different. I mean, in Lazio has fans, while Manchester United, for example, haven't got ultras or supported fans that chant during all the match. So the atmosphere is completely different. You can complain about the stadium because watching a match from the Stadio Olimpico is quite complicated, and especially if you are in Curva Nord or Sud, you really don't watch all the matches. I remember when I was in Curva Nord, I had to go back home and watch. He scored from there. I thought he was, just inside the penalty box. Instead, he was 25 meters away. Or, I thought he scored from the line. Instead, he was 10 yards away from the goal and things like that. So, but yeah, the atmosphere is simply unbelievable in the Italian stadium, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, I suppose, that a lot of people who haven't attended games live don't really get to see, is that if sometimes you can hear the noise on the TV and so on, and you can get a sense of the atmosphere, but often, the stadium isn't full, there's a lot of empty seats, and it looks worse on TV, I suppose, and it can be a bit confusing to understand why people always talk about how amazing it is to be at these games, to attend games live. But the reason is, I suppose, that when you're in there, it feels like you're in a volcano sometimes. I mean, it is like the noise that is generated in those parts of the stadium is incredible, and it has to be really for that to come across on the TV because, like you say, you are kind of 3 kilometers away from the pitch, basically, by the time you're towards the back of the Curva Nord. So, I mean, to be honest, it's not much better in the press box at the Olimpico nowadays either, but that's another complaint for another time. But yeah, so we'll continue. Maddie said, apart from the 26th of May, a lot of people are doing this, by the way, where it seems like they don't want to say the 26th of May because it's too obvious. So it's almost like we all just kind of agree at the start that, okay, 26th of May is the top, and then we'll talk about the other things. But anyway, he says, apart from the 26th of May, the first time I walked up the stairs to the Curva Nord and saw the pitch was my most treasured memory. It was May 2018, the game versus Atalanta. And yeah, I think he even sent us a video of that moment as well, which is nice. Per Nielsen, his first experience of a Lazio game was a bit different. First live Lazio game, a friendly in Gothenburg in 1999. More than 35,000 spectators at Nia Levy. Right now, this is an opportunity for me to see if I can finally corner Vittorio into something he doesn't know about Lazio. What was the score in Gothenburg Lazio friendly in 1999, Vittorio?
I don't remember.
Shocking. Cardboard fan.
Yeah. I don't remember big results, so it could be a 2-1 or a 1-0.
Yeah, that is annoying because I did actually look this up earlier and it was 1-0.
Could it be that Kenneth Anderson scored?
Sinisa Mihailovic for Lazio. Okay. Equalised, I think, both goals in the first half. And Lazio were missing a few players, Salas and a couple of others from the Copa America at the time. But yeah, I mean, it must be amazing if you're if Lazio come to your country, your home country, on a pre-season friendly. That was something I was always waiting for them to do when I was young. please come and
In
play in
Scotland.
Scotland one summer. But for some reason, they don't want to come to Scotland in the summer. I can't imagine why. Anyway, Andrena said, my first time seeing Lazio at the Olimpico, a 6-3 win over Sampdoria. 2 goals from Signori, 1 from Casiraghi, 1 from Aaron Winter, 1 from Fuser, and an own goal by Mihailovic. Nothing quite like the feeling of your first time in the Curva Nord. Do you remember that game?
Zeman era, when Lazio was scoring.
It has to be. If it's 6-3, it has to be the Zeman.
Well, in that time, Lazio was playing 4-3, and Diego Fuser was scoring so many goals. He was terrific. He had these great shots from long range, and the defenders were already busy with Casiraghi, Signori, and Baudi, and he had plenty of space. So he scored a lot of goals that year. So yeah, that was a funny Lazio. What was really interesting. I remember once of that year, I think, I was playing football, so I arrived to the match late. The match already started, and it was like 10 minutes, and it was Lazio Padova, and we were down 1 goal. And I remember saying to my cousin that was there, don't worry, we will win 5-1. And we won 5-1. It was that type of Lazio. We were scoring 4 goals like that, And then maybe we were able to lose against Valencia in the Champions League, but that's another discussion. But yeah, that team was unbelievable.
Well, I think Stefano Filippi trumps it with the first game competition. He said his first live match was being at the Cup Winners' Cup final in 1999. Pancaro's crossfield pass for Vieri to head home, Nedved's turn and shot to win the game late on, an incredible day I'll never forget. That's, he chose his first game fairly well there, I would say.
Birmingham against Real Mallorca. Yeah, great memory.
Amazing. Right. I'm starting to get slightly worried about the number of these entries we've still got left. I didn't realize how many there were. But there's one now that a few people have come up with, which is a big one for me as well, which was Miroslav Klose's goal to win the Rome derby late on. Maher Uba Arya says Klose's goal in injury time against Roma, rete incredibile. Fuad Mamadov says last-minute derby goal by Klose. And then Arya Ramadan Akbar writes more generally Lulic's goal, obviously, and seasons. He just writes generally the seasons when Klose played for us. To have such a player at our disposal is really something else. Yeah, I mean, that was a huge moment for me, actually, as well, Vittorio. That was my first Rome derby. I think I've spoken about this before. I had almost no money and spent almost all of it on getting a ticket for the Monte Mario because everything else was sold out. It was had to go by myself. And then at last minute, Miroslav Klose pops up and scores the winner. I mean, that was a really incredible derby, and it seems to have had a big influence on other people as well.
Yeah, it was that moment in time where Lazio was struggling to win derbies. It was, what was it? 4 derby in a row that Lazio wasn't able to win. And again, it looks like we couldn't make it. We were one man Roma was 1 man down, and we was attacking, etc. We couldn't score. And then last minute, extra time, and Matusalem made that assist, and Miro Klose scored. It was terrific. Everybody, all the Lazio bench running in the Curva Nord with Eddie Rey as well. That was a great memory. Yep.
Yeah, incredible. And then we went and won the return derby that season as well. It was a very good year for derbies. All of a sudden, turned it on its head.
Luis Enrique was a very friendly manager for Lazio.
Yeah, he was good. Barca Roma. I miss Barca Roma.
Yeah, we all do.
Right, Benham Haydarshahi writes, earlier this season, when I finally saw Radu in training, when Patrick welcomed him with a hug, I still get goosebumps. We wouldn't be where we are without him. While we're on Radu, that Kolarov moment from last season was priceless. I thought that was quite nice, Vittorio, because Radu is almost part of the furniture now. You know, you are very used to him being around. He's not a very spectacular player. He hasn't produced an awful lot of particularly standout moments. But at the same time, obviously, one listener he means that much to them that just Radu coming so close to leaving the club last summer and then not leaving the club is for them their most treasured memory. I think that says a lot.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, Rado has been there for ages, forever. I don't remember last team Lazio played without Stefan Radu. So, he's a real Lazio fan. So it was good to have him back. I think everybody was a little bit concerned about Rado leaving the club this summer. And yes, last year he didn't play that well, but this year he's playing great football. And I think, obviously, he's not the secret why Lazio's there. He's 1 point behind Juve, but it's one of the secrets why Lazio played so well this year. He's one of the silent leader of this team, I would say.
Yeah, and I think as well that he does perform on the pitch, and he is reliable. He is consistent. He has been around, like you say, for so long that people, it's almost like having, like a kind of like a boyhood club kind of player in your team in a way. He's almost become, the Roman in the Lazio ranks in a way, even though he's from Romania. But he's just become synonymous with the club. We've got a couple that are more recent as well, a few that are more recent. Actually, the Coppa Italia final from last year. James writes, when Correa scored that superb solo second goal in the final against Atalanta, it was an amazing feeling. I wish I could relive it. Apollo Hayes writes, watching the Coppa Italia final last season in person. Wonderful feeling, and was amazing to celebrate around so many other Laziali. So yeah, last season's Coppa Italia for some people still out there.
Well, it was a difficult match because Atalanta is not, that type of team that creates tension, etc. But they play great football. They are a very dangerous team. And Lazio, what was it? A couple of weeks before, lost at home 3-1 in a match where Lazio played 30 minutes well and then was dominated by Atalanta. So, it was for me a very difficult final. Watching it now, people will say, yeah, Atalanta in the final is an easy one. No, Atalanta is playing great football. And I think that was a masterpiece from Simone Inzaghi because he did exactly the opposite of that match that we play in Serie A. First half, Lazio was really conservative, trying to defend. And in the second half, Lazio played much better. Exactly the opposite of what happened in Serie A match. And you can see that as the match was going forward, Lazio was playing better. And then when Milinkovic-Savic came in, the match changed. Let's not forget about that, because I think Milinkovic-Savic is the reason why Lazio won that match.
Yeah, it was huge. It was a great moment. Fantastic atmosphere. It was it was one of those days where I was very grateful for, yet at the same time really hated my job because I would have rather been not working. But it was a kind of pleasure to be there at it. But yeah, I mean, trophies mean a lot. This is not a club that is just there to make the money to move up the UEFA rankings. We do actually appreciate winning these trophies, and it means a lot to people to do so. And it was an amazing run to get there. It was actually an amazing run, to be honest, and a great final. But some people mentioning this season as well. I mean, David just writes this season in response to his most treasured Lazio memories. And we writes being at the top of the league at the end of February in 2020. So we don't really need to talk about that. If you want to hear us talking about this season, then just simply listen to any other podcast we've done in the last few months. But yeah, finally, we've got a few kind of more personal ones people gave us, which I thought is a nice place to finish. Sean McIntosh wrote when his dad sewed the Scudetto and Coppa Italia patches onto his Lazio kit, and he's sent us a picture of that as well, which we've retweeted. So you can go and have a look at that. That's a nice family moment. I like that. Thomas Romano said, going to Formello for the first time and meeting the players. I was 10 years old. I have a particularly fond memory of Rocky, one of my favourite players at the time. He took the time to step out of his car and take a picture and seemed a really nice and genuine person. Which is nice. Have you ever been to Formello to see the players, Vittorio?
No, no. Never been to Formello. Too far away from Rome.
Lorenzo writes to us as well. It was the first game of pre-season in 2013 away at Crystal Palace. The first official match since the 26th of May. Me and my brother sat in the away end in Lazio shirts and chanted all game, mostly for Lulic. At the end of the game, as the players were walking to the tunnel, he threw us his shirt, and then we waited outside by the Lazio bus, and he signed the shirt and got pictures with all the players. Sounds like a pretty amazing day out, to be honest, for a pre-season game.
Yep, I was just arriving in England, and I was saying to my wife, wow, well, maybe I should go watch Lazio, but she said, if you go, you're not coming back home. So I had to cancel the trip.
There seems to be a running theme over the years here on this podcast of you and your wife kind of having issues with your Lazio supporting life.
To be honest, the day before I arrived in England and we enter in the new house, and she said, you cannot leave me the day afterwards. So fair enough.
Fair enough. Right, we're on to the last couple now. Lazio and Lazio won against Juventus. It was the first time I Lazio, and I immediately fell in love. Sometime after that, I was walking with my mother through Belgrade's city centre and saw football shirts for sale, many of them, and I found a Lazio one. I've still got it.
I think that was the Coppa Italia, right?
He doesn't specify, but if that's your hunch, let's be honest, you're probably right. You've got a pretty good strike rate tonight, I'd say.
Yeah, I think so. We won the Coppa Italia final against Juventus with 2 goals of Fiore, I think, and Corradi. But
Fiore was in the early years of me following Lazio. He's really one of my favourite players. I love Fiore. Great player.
Yeah,
anyway,
he was
finally
very underrated, I thought.
Absolutely. Hussein Nesta writes, and this is a nice one to finish on. To me personally, it's the people (brackets fans) I meet or get to know along the way. Some of those become like family, even though some of them you only want to talk to or discuss with online. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the great thing about being football fans, isn't it? You do kind of become part of a community, part of something bigger, and I guess a lot of the memories people have told us about, and a lot of our own memories are connected to the people we've shared them with, which it sounds a bit cheesy, but that is a great part of following this club.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is, especially if you're able to go to the matches, you feel part of them, right? You feel part of the club. You feel like, that match, I was part of it. They won thanks to me a little bit. So, it's a small family, and that's the secret of football, right? You feel part of the club. Other sports, like tennis, Formula One, it's not the same thing. So, and you have to say that Lazio, the atmosphere at Lazio's match is completely different compared to a lot of other teams. So, I think it's particular. It's something different to any other, even Juventus, they're colder. Milan, Inter, it's not the same atmosphere like at the Lazio match, honestly. I know a lot of people would disagree, but this is a Lazio podcast. So,
but they're probably not listening to Lazio Lounge. So yeah, I mean, to top it off, I mean, what would you say is yours, Vittorio, if you could pick your most treasured Lazio memory? And any one thing?
well, as I was saying at the beginning, I thought it was Lazio Milan, the Coppa Italia final. I don't know if you remember. Probably you were too young. I was there at the stadium. Lazio lost the first leg at Milan with Weah scoring, and we had to win the second one. And beginning of second half, Albertini scored on a free kick, and people start thinking, we have no chance. And instead, we were able to recover. Guerino Gottardi came in. Gottardi, no one mentioned it, but he's a sort of legend of this club. He was unbelievable. Not the best player, but he scored in the derby at the last second. He scored in that final and got a penalty. He changed that match. And seeing Lazio with only 45 minutes scoring 3 goals against that Milan, that was still the Milan of Maldini, Baresi, Weah, Donadoni, Albertini, all great players, and Lazio able to recover, won that match, and that was the first trophy for Lazio after the 74 Scudetto. So, and I was there, it was unbelievable. I remember the celebration all night long. It was like we won the Champions League. Instead, it was the Coppa Italia. But yeah, the first trophy is something you will never forget, I think.
You had no idea what was to come at that stage.
Well, that was the beginning of everything,
yeah.
Right? That was the beginning of everything. We won the Coppa del Coppe thanks to that Coppa Italia final. So,
yeah, and you feel like you've earned it by that stage after the tough years before, I suppose, as well.
Absolutely. And your best memory is the derby?
Well, I mean, I'm struggling to narrow it down to one, I suppose. I mean, I've already mentioned a few. There was my first game was the win over Udinese was just a big moment to finally make it to a live match. That was in 2011, I think. And then I do feel very lucky to have been at some amazing derbies. The closer one, but and then last season the 3-0 game. But to be honest, if anything, maybe the second derby of that season under Eddie Rea in 2012 when we won 2-1. But the difference was that time I was in the Curva Nord. I'd made a lot of friends with Lazio fans by then, and it was like you were saying before, Vittorio, where I can barely remember anything from that game. It was all about the experience of being in there, this kind of intoxicating atmosphere, and then to go and win the game. And I remember when the second goal went in, the whole Curva kind of collapsed backwards, and everyone was kind of lying on each other, just kind of rolling around and hugging each other and things. And it was a really incredible night because a great result, but also just a great experience as a fan as well. So I'd probably go with that. But anyway, thanks so much to everyone for getting involved, because we only gave you about 24, 48 hours notice on this, and we've had great engagement obviously from people, so it's really nice. Really cheered me up in my cage here to go through all this.
You can listen it again tomorrow just to cheer you up all day long.
Yeah, nothing else to do, so.
What are you singing tomorrow? Or you're just listening when you go on the balcony?
I don't know, we'll have to see. Tonight we didn't have any songs. Actually, there's generally a kind of rendition of the national anthem at 6:00, and then there's been some other things getting organised. Thankfully, my street's quite a lively one, so we do have people doing things, and everyone kind of waving at each other and saying hello and so on. But I don't know. I'm quite tempted to start some Lazio songs and see what happens. I've seen some quite good videos of these balcony wars breaking out in other parts of the city with the different songs.
I saw them too. Well, it was a great podcast. Maybe we should do something similar next week, because I don't think football is coming back, unfortunately. The latest rumors is that Serie A could start in May, beginning of May. So it's going to be a long time without football, Alasdair. So we'll have to come up with other ideas. And so, guys, if you're listening and have some ideas, write it. You know where to reach us on Facebook, facebook.com/Lazio Lounge, or on Twitter Lazio_Lounge. So if you have any idea for other podcasts, you know where to find us. And again, Alasdair, thank you very much. And guys, we're gonna talk again next Monday. And so if you have suggestion, please write us because there's not gonna be any Lazio match, I think.
Yeah, please give us ideas.
Good night, Alasdair.
Night night.